60 plus racing adventures open wheeler single seaters begins here at Barcelona on RaceSpotTV. The unique iRacing league for drivers 60 years of age or over has carved an impressive niche in the iRacing league community, now past 30 seasons of competition and still continuing on strong. As I like to say, new person turns 60 every day. David Haynes here with Jake Sperry to bring you coverage on RaceSpotTV as they begin their qualifying and then head towards two 19-lap races of the historic version of Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Jake, this is our calendar.
It is, and of course we'll be with you 3 times over the course of the season. We'll jump with you here at the season opener, we'll jump with you at the season's end when we hit Zandvoort, then at the season finale, and in the middle of all of that we'll join you on January 22nd for the mid-season when we head to the Temple of Speed at Monza. But this is a calendar that has a lot of high speed, actually, I'd say, to start the season off. After here at Barcelona, you've got VIR, Watkins Glen, Phillip Island, Mugello and Monza. You'd say those are 5 power tracks that you've got to try and get your head around. Got, and of course, another power track in Montreal and the Red Bull Ring to try and deal with. But there is still those downforce circuits like Interlagos. Jerez is going to come to mind. Imola as well as a good all-rounder as a circuit. So I would say this is going to favour, in terms of this season 33 schedule here, David, those who like putting the foot to the floor and do not like lifting it to hit the brake.
Yeah, really high average speeds around a lot of those racetracks, including Monza, where we'll see you after this. It's high average speeds around here, particularly without the final chicane. Much quicker racetrack without that to slow us down. This is qualifying right now as we take a look at Barry Hills. And it's even quicker through this section of the lap as well on the historic version, where you don't take the hairpin, you take the much wider corner through here in the final sector of the lap. Barry Hills, it says he's 4th at the moment, but I don't think we've seen a representative time out of anyone yet. That's what we are about to see when the bulk of our drivers cross the start-finish line in their Super Formula lights. This league from 60 Plus Racing Adventures has chopped and changed vehicles a little bit over the years, from Star Mazda to Formula 3 to where we are here with the Super Formula Light. We are going to start to see representative times from qualifying, and this is where you try to use the slick tyres, try to use the amount of downforce that the Super Formula Lights car has got to really keep your minimum speed through the corners super high through these sequences.
Yeah, and this is the opening sector of the lap, which is one of those fantastic flying circuits through the Repsol corner of turn 4 and down the hill looking for Elf corner here at turn 5. This is what I like to call, David, the dyno track out there, because this is effectively a dyno test for each and every single car. There's a reason why Formula 1, for example, comes here and does their winter testing around this circuit, because it tests all of the elements that a car needs to go and make this circuit work. Up at the top at turn 9, you've got to make sure you're absolutely on it. The kikes are away. It's turn number 10 out on this circuit, and it's got all of the high speed sections of this track. So it's got the downforce, it's got the slower sections as well that you can work with, and so you really get a good understanding of what this car is at the moment. John Payne there for the moment was fastest, but you can't go anywhere when you see 774 out there. Greg Seitz is up there once again, and he has got himself a 131.587 through New Holland corner and over towards the line. Barry Hills looking to improve, and at the moment, just crossing the line, goes with that 4th fastest time at 6/10 adrift.
So super competitive between Greg Seitz and John Payne from their first of 2 qualifying laps. That's what they get in this 10-minute session. 2 flyers to set the grid for race 1. Race 2 has its own separate qualifying session later on. It's just all about qualifying. And race 1 right now, Eugene Clark crosses the start-finish line. Really long front straight here. You carry so much speed out of the final corner down the front straight, and then can brake very late for this sequence of 1 and 2. As well, so slipstreaming down the front straight can be pretty powerful there as well. No times yet for Eugene Clark, Ed Benson, Ulf Olsen or Steve O'Malley, but you've got 17 drivers that do have a qualifying time track limit's not huge around here, I don't imagine. So I'm not sure you're going to see many disallowed lap times, save for really, really big mistakes.
Yeah, I doubt we'll see that, as I will correct myself and say that that is the Seat corner and not the Elf corner being turn 1. But you are getting a sense here of how much these drivers want to attack. John Payne went 3/10 quicker, only for Greg Seitz once again to go a further 10.5 to the top and get what's needed. But this is a wide track, and these drivers know how to attack it. It's well defined, and I would say it's an incredibly smooth circuit out there. You're not really dealing with too many bumps. This is FIA grade 1 at its very, very finest, so I would say there is not really that much to worry about with this circuit in terms of staying within the bounds, because I expect a lot, if not all of these drivers to be able to manage that at the moment. But as Eugene Clark rounds the final corner and looks to go and attack for the line, we'll see what this second lap time is going to be, and it's a 33.9, which is about 2.8 off of the leading pace and good enough for 17th out of 21.
Saw a whole heap of change through the top of the timing order amongst that as well. Roberto Catalano went to 3rd, Gerhardus Jorgensen up into 6th there. Looking at Marcellus Breuning right now, I think he's got 2 laps completed, so this is a little bit more practice. This is an in-lap. I don't think Breuning can move higher than the 10th that he stands in at the moment, just behind Stephen Carpenter, just ahead of Russ Addy. Got pit entry all the way to this side here, and that's where Marcellus Breuning is going to. You can carry so much speed through the pit entry, and look how late the cones are there that start the 80km/h pit lane. They're a long way down that canyon of pit entry. Yes, 80km/h pit speed limit. Also 80km/h pace car speed around here as well. This circuit and many others are older than the iRacing safety car, knowing how to slow down for corners. So he's also a bit restricted in the straights.
What I can say is that every single driver who is out there at the moment with 3 minutes to go in qualifying has used up all of their laps. So this will be practice time only for them. So at the moment, I think it's pretty safe to say that Greg Seitz is going to be your pole sitter here today. And on top of that, Ulf Olsen, the only driver who hasn't set a time, is out of laps as well. So was unable to set a representative flying lap. But I think it is going to be interesting to see what happens over the course of this season, whether it will be more of the same or there are going to be different characters that find themselves up at the pointy end of the order. And I think Roberto Catalano's pace looks quite good, because he can sometimes be a little bit hit or miss. To see him up in 3rd position in the number 3 car, I think is quite a big positive for him.
Yeah, and quite a bit clear in time of the rest of the field as well. They're 4th, 5th. So from sort of 4th through to 14th, if that was your whole grid, you'd say super, super competitive. But then you've got Greg Seitz, John Payne, head and shoulders above the rest. Roberto Catalano sort of splitting the difference at the moment. Everyone has done 2 qualifying laps and completed their qualifying at this stage. So a few of them still out there and rotating, like Peter Holstrom here, who shortly won't be as he comes to a stop in his yellow Ferrari. Now that's the Formula One livery, but it's giving what if AF Corsa entered a 3rd F1 car in the World Championship?
You know those 3rd kits that you get in football matches? It's very much a case of putting on the 3rd kit, because you'd have the red kit, you'd have the white kit, and then of course the yellow kit there coming along would be 3rd kit colours, which would be used for, say, the Carabao Cup or something like that. But I do find it quite interesting that you see all these liveries and the amount of design work that goes into making sure that they are as close and as accurate as possible. And then you get someone like Greg Seitz, for example, who goes, nope, I don't want anything to spoil what I'm looking at. I want everybody to see themselves in the way that I drive. I've got a purely chrome car.
Yes, he had more of an Air Force thing going on at one point. But that on the Super Formula Light is pure chrome. And he should almost be done. We should all almost be done with qualifying. and head towards the race. Yeah, Barry Hill's also just out on track there at the moment, but it'll shortly send us to the grid, and we'll have it locked in for race 1 of 2, a new season of 60-plus racing adventures beginning here in Barcelona. Catalonia is our home, according to the front straight, and what you love to see is the official track logo is this configuration. It's the classic one. It's no fiddly chicanes on the billboards. They know what the people want. It's this layout of Barcelona, Catalonia. Greg Seitz and John Payne again. They're the front row there in a super competitive shootout between the two of them in the qualifying there. Roberto Catalano in third, Greg Garris in the fourth position. Mike McCormick and Gerhardus Jorrison are fifth and sixth, as Todd Scholl and Barry Hills are on the next row. Stephen Karkner in ninth. Marcellus Breuning we saw in 10th position. A little bit of teammate action there for Russ Addy and John Morgan, as they're sporting a little bit of tricolore by the looks of things this season. Franz Josef Sturm, Richard Coulomb 13th and 14th, Peter Hallstrom in 15th, Steve O'Malley in 16th, Eugene Clark 17th, JC Hayes 18th, and like we said, qualifying times from almost everyone by the looks of things. Jan-Erik Skrefsrud is looking pretty new to 60-plus racing adventures. Ed Benson perhaps likewise as well in the 20th position. I thought Ulf Olsen in 21st. Qualifying time, but perhaps not. And these are the weather conditions. 20 degrees in the air, 25 in the track. You can see there's certainly partly clouds out there. There's a 3-kilometre-an-hour wind blowing and relatively low humidity, which is nice.
Yeah, running with a static weather condition here today, so it will not change over the course of this race. And when they've got to do the work that they've got, so they've got 19 laps worth of racing, or an hour and a half, ladies and gentlemen, whichever comes first. And I would suggest that 19 laps with their 91-second lap times is what's going to be what's coming first. We're going to be seeing that all important as they battle, and it's not just the one race, it's the two races that they have, and of course it's your best result from one of the two races that goes as your points haul as you go forward. So it does pay off to get great results in race 1 and race 2 when it comes to this series. It just means you've got to try and take as many points away. iRacing Porsche first safety car dives down into the pits. Pace controlled by Greg Seitz.
Still waiting to see that BMW safety car at some point, but the safety car is in. The green flag awaits Greg Seitz. He's gone. He's got a long straight down towards turn number 1 though. This is a racetrack where it's tough to follow in the middle of the racetrack, but super slipstreamy down the front straight here, as evidenced on this first of 19 laps. Greg Seitz back across onto the regular racing line. Super Formula Light, a car that can be difficult on the cold tyres. That's what everyone's got through turns 1, 2 and 3 the first time around. Some of them struggling to get some grip, particularly back there. Gerhardus Jorrison drops back 1 spot into 7th. Not a whole lot of change immediately the rest of the way around. Easy for me to say. And then we head in towards turn 4, a first real braking zone of the racetrack.
Well, this is where you've got to look at and say drivers are going to be aggressive, and they're still looking as they head over to Sayat corner, the likes of Jorrison. Car's going to go straight on, and that is not good for the backdraft car there that finds itself spiralling off there. Stephen Karkner finds himself dropping a mile down the order and all the way to the back. That's what happens in the opening laps of races, but as they continue on, Barry Hills has his eyes set on Todd Scholl in the Gulf-coloured car out there in front of him. Behind him is Marcellus Breuning, who's got the Formula 3.5 experience behind him here in iRacing, and he'll use that to his advantage, diving down the inside, getting the move sorted. Massive lock-up puff of smoke from Todd Scholl in front, but Breuning gets the pass.
So good opening lap from Breuning, good opening lap from John Morgan. Stephen Karkner less so, as he locked up and he was off through the gravel we saw. And Jan-Erik Skrefsrud off to a more tentative start to this first race. With the first lap completed, Greg Seitz leads. Whoa, okay, that's what happened for Karkner. Maybe there was a bit of rear locking or a tiny bit of contact behind as well there. Pretty congested in that part of the field on the opening lap, and I think there's been even more dramas for Stephen Karkner as well.
Yeah, he's down in the pits, and that would indicate that he's just had a spin coming out of New Holland. He caught the curb on the inside, just grabbed the gravel on the outside, and he has gone careening into the wall, has completely smashed the front up, and that is pretty much that. Here's another look at it. You can see he goes slightly too far wide, and there's no amount of, I would say, reactionary time possible that will get you to save that. I think 100 out of 100 drivers would plant that straight in the wall, as we got a footwork here going through the gravel and trying to stay out of trouble. That's Steve O'Malley, who's trying to keep himself in play. He does so. He's got to be worried because JC Hay now will be thinking about, well, can I capitalize on that?
Yeah, so O'Malley drops back a little bit. Ulf Olsen goes up a couple more spots. This is a look at JC Hay, a little wide, a little loose, but he manages to save that one. It's 2 or 3 cars back where we're less lucky. JC Hay will feel very, very fortunate with that reprieve.
Well, the good thing there for JC Hay is that he only caught the AstroTurf there on the outside and not fully catching the gravel. It is easy to catch the gravel. You are always running on a tight rope, and they'll be looking at this circuit going, well, how much do I need to attack? Wonderful work, by the way, by Marcellus Bruning to make that pass on Todd Scholl. As just in front of that, here comes the side-by-side, as there is Mike McCormick, who will lose out to Gerhardus Jorrison, who finds himself now up inside the top 5 with that pass. Top 2 relatively away, but that gap is fluctuating at nearly a second right now at the front, which you could say is the breaking point that we have seen so many times in this series. You get to about 1.5, you'll get the element of the slipstream, but anything outside of that, it becomes nearly impossible to close back.
Yeah, but you've got what makes racing around here kind of frustrating for Formula One cars. Other cars can do it a little bit better, but it's these high-speed, medium-speed corners that become difficult to follow, and then a really long front straight where you can maybe close back up, but by the time you've gone through all of the corners, have you eaten a little bit too much dirty air, put a bit too much heat into your tyres to be able to be as close as you want to be to put pressure on down and towards turn 1. Super Formula Lights car doesn't worry about it quite so badly, but they are still an aerodynamic race car with all of the aerodynamics to go on with that. Peter Hallstrom back here with Ulf Olsen, Steve O'Malley. That's Olsen around the outside, climbing up the hill through the right-hander. And they're both in pursuit of Eugene Clark, as Todd Scholl will fall victim of exactly what happened to Stephen Karkner. Almost a perfect recreation.
That's not what you want to see. Final corner strikes again. Scholl was having a good run, and he just gets heavy, a little bit too far out there, and the car just decides, bang, into the barriers, and there's not much you can do. You can see full, he doesn't even turn left. He just realizes, I'm gone. Nothing I can do from that, because you have the legitimate time of maybe 0.01 of a second to try and rectify that. Todd Scholl, not much he can do. Second victim of the barriers.
A little bit of dust and dirt off the racing line there as well. You might have noticed. I think the longer this goes on, the tougher it becomes to make moves around the outside as more marbles build up, and in some places drivers bring a little bit of gravel, dirt and dust back onto the racetrack. Something that's been tweaked and updated for the most recent iRacing build, of which this new season is part of. So something, even if the car has stayed the same last season to this season, that will be a little bit different about the racing is going to be the dynamic track surface and the particles, and where the grip is, and where the dirt, dust and just nastiness ends up.
Well, look at that final corner. That's going to be the one where you've got to be paying very close attention to, because the drivers that are just clipping that are going to be finding themselves over the top and bringing that onto circuit. McCormick under pressure. Here comes Marcellus Bruning then, as the Dutchman moves to try and get that place, and will look to try and confirm it, and he gets that as McCormick is earlier on the brakes into the opening corner. Big lock up though, and he's got to be careful here, is Marcellus Bruning, because he has just picked up a slowdown slowdown penalty by going a little bit too fast into the opening corner. McCormick will get his run. Penalty is served, but here comes Barry Hills, who's not going to sit by idly and say, I'm not going to have that place. Bruning's going to have to go around the outside of Repsol, get the inside for Sayat, and he's done just about that. So now he can throw it deep on the brakes here on the inside. He has a lot of grip through the middle of the corner and does well to maintain position.
Yeah, just embarrassed himself a little bit with the brakes in turn one, and then it's taken all the way to here to try to stabilize it, clear the slowdown penalty, and then fend off Barry Hills, all the while trying to let Mike McCormick not get too far away. Russ Addy, John Morgan are starting to find their feet back here, 9th and 10th. It does look like new liveries for them this season, so they're very, very schmick with all of that. Craig Seitz is now 1.7 seconds clear in the lead. One of the things I keep seeing is even that final corner, the dirty air, you want to be able to stay almost flat out through there, but they can't. They're picking up a whole bit of understeer, and the drivers who commit a little too hard are the ones who end up washing a little bit wide, entering that danger zone with the AstroTurf, the gravel, and then of course the concrete walls.
Well, that's the thing with these Super Formula lights that normally run over in Japan as a feeder series to the Super Formula series that they have out there. They are designed effectively to be a lighter version, hence the name of the light, of the full Super Formula. So what does that mean? Well, it means that it doesn't have as much power in the back of it, so you're going to have to rely on slipstream a little bit more in order to make your moves. But also, it's got slightly less aerodynamics on it. So you're looking around, yes, it's got aero, it's got a rear wing, it's got itself a front wing, but it is designed in such a way that it is trying to keep the car planted to the ground, and the less technical stuff you have on the car, naturally there's going to be less that's created in terms of turbulence and weight as you go through. So when you look around at a car like this, you're starting to think, well, yeah, there isn't much downforce on it, but there is still enough where you are going to feel it through some of these corners, and you're not necessarily going to be able to follow completely in lockstep. You are going to lose a half a tenth to a tenth through every corner if you are directly behind and you need the slipstream to pull yourself back level again.
Definitely seeing it manifest in the form of understeer when the drivers are trying to carry speed through what would ordinarily be flat out or close to flat out corners, but then they're just a little too close to the car in front, and it's giving them a bit of grief. This is the biggest pack that we've got at the moment from 6th place. Mike McCormick, Marcellus Breuning, Barry Hills, Russ Addy. John Morgan dropped a tiny bit back off this lap. Breuning again, he's just waiting for his chance to try to have an attack like he had at Mike McCormick a couple of laps ago, when he then had that lockup, then ran wide, and it brought a few other drivers back into the picture that's been giving Breuning this continual headache.
And this is where you don't want to be as a driver, stuck in the middle where you want to attack, but you also know that you can't attack too hard because you've got to then go and defend. This is effectively Schrodinger's overtake. You must attack and defend at exactly the same time. Do not like being in the middle of a group. It does keep you on your senses. It does keep you the most alive over the course of these races, but at least for the moment, Breuning, looking at McCormick, hasn't let him run off into the distance, so he's left to the pack of wolves of Barry Hills and maybe the encroaching Russ Addy, who was a tenth quicker than these drivers on the last lap. So there is certainly a sense of you can go and make something happen, you can go and chase these gaps down, but when you are sitting down, you're looking at what Marcellus Breuning's doing. Crack on with it. Lap 7 of 19, very much in the pack at the moment, looking down the barrel of a top 10. Top 5 might be slightly out of reach, but a top 10 you'd certainly take with the first race and give yourself a platform to build on. I'd say happy days so far.
It's good for Barry Hills. He was really, really close, and now as they go into 6th gear and almost max it out, I'm listening, almost maxing out. It did get so close there, but if you can't attack there, then you're stuck through this whole next sequence of corners, particularly turn 3. Look how much angle he's got in at the front, the nose just doesn't quite respect it. And then we head into the next sequence of corners. Opens up as you go through turn 4, starts off tight and then opens up somewhat downhill here you're looking to have a slightly late apex as you get to power, and that's McCormick running through the gravel, putting it onto his tyres, putting it onto the track, putting it into the air.
And certainly hoping that he can run away with what he's got. Barry Hills over the top of the Campsa corner, turn 9, out on track. He's definitely trying to eye this up. This is the second place you can have a go over at Lekaitsa, turn number 10, out on circuit. Unable to really make that happen there, but you're really getting the sense now that there is a sense of Barry Hills wants that move, and he'll quite happily take that place when that opportunity gets presented. They might have it when they've got lap traffic on the horizon if they catch it. It's something worth reminding as Todd Scholl's back out on circuit, and so too Stephen Karkner. They do have 2 spare cars per race, which means that if you break one, well, that's okay. Come back to the pits, get yourself the repair time, the tow time, and then you'll be allowed back out in a brand new car to go and keep on racing. You don't want to use those too much. In fact, you don't want to use them at all. There's no pit stops here in this one. And again, McCormick running very wide in front of Bruning, which will be a little bit distracting, especially when you've got Barry Hills trying to unlock turn 3 of Renault to try and dive down the inside at Repsol, and just doesn't quite have the angle nor the brakes.
But it was good. He sort of crossed over the wake and then found a little bit of clean air on a narrower line than the driver in front was doing, and it looked really good, even if it didn't quite work out in the end. It was innovative, still something different than the car in front, and finding a little bit of clean air for his nose. Like IndyCar on short ovals or something at Iowa, just like trying to do something a little bit different to get some clean air on your nose so you can stay close. And that's what he's done. He remains very, very close. An opportunity to outbrake the end of the back straight here. Still a decent enough braking zone, even if it is a little wider than the Grand Prix layout. Problem you end up with is now you're at the outside for the next one. Barry Hills will look to cross back over underneath again. He's the king of the switchback right now on this lap.
Can only be king of the switchback if you can actually make the move happen when you try, and has to back way out of it through the final corner for fear of just clipping the front nose, and that has completely opened up the door. Russ Addy is not going to take this one lying down. An opportunity presenting itself here, but this is where the issue runs into. Barry's got a bit of slipstream. They're going to throw it into the opening corner. Bruning runs wide in front of them. Addy gets one. Addy might want a second here if he tries to get that move. No slowdown penalty for Bruning this time as he goes through, but now where does he try and get the pivot? Looks over to the inside, and quite cleverly Barry Hills decides to back out of it inside of 4 searching. Bruning has been loving the outside line here around this track, but it's not going to pay off unless he's brave on the brakes here at Seat, as again Russ Addy holding that outside line has to yield this time, and they've brought Addy's teammate John Morgan into play.
Bruning with the lockup at 1, Russ Addy with the lockup at 5. The braking proving relatively difficult, and that's a wild ride over the sausage curbs at the chicane at the bottom of the hill. But it doesn't cost Russ Addy near as much as I thought it was. I thought he was headed for a big time loss, perhaps even some damage on the car, but he's right back in picture in the best battle that we have going on in the track. Mike McCormick gets away from this group with all the shenanigans happening here. So Bruning, Addy, Barry Hills losing a little bit of time to what some of the other drivers are able to do. Keeps John Morgan in the picture. Franz Josef Sturm not able to quite close on this group around 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. And Greg Seitz has started the 11th lap of this 19-lap race, just edging out his lead ahead of John Payne, while Roberto Catalano's 3rd place on the grid continues to be 3rd place on the racetrack. Barry Hills now with his nose back in front of Russ Addy through the opening part of the lap. A little bit of a reprieve from Marcellus Bruning as we're into the back half of race 1.
Well, the important thing with these moves is that if you are going to go and try and make a move, the important thing to remember is you've got to make it happen quickly. The moment that you start battling side by side for more than one corner, you're going to start dropping that time away, and that's always going to be the worry and the point of concern. And these drivers are really trail braking through these corners. The amounts of puffs of smoke I'm seeing from the front wheels just deciding that they don't want to play, and they start start tapping out a bit going through the corners, I think is staggering. You're getting a real sense of understanding of how much these drivers are trying to get the turn in through the corners. It is at the expense of the fronts, and the more that they try and wear that front out, the more that they'll need that trail brake to go through. And again, we see it once more. There's a perfect illustration of how Barry Hills is trying to drive the 66.
Certainly seems like in a couple of these braking zones, they're almost lifting the inside front tire, and so you are seeing some puffs of smoke off it. Particularly the corners, the track drops away through the corner. There's quite a few where the track isn't flat. You're sort of descending down through the corner, or just as you go into it, it comes back up. Saw a spot or two change further down the order. I think Olsen, Eugene Clark, and a few others battling out their big slide from Barry Hills. Are they beginning to reach the thermal limit of these tyres on a sunny day and a racetrack that's known for really just non-stop medium high speed corners, wearing out the tyres and really heating them up?
Well, it is a cold track, so they do have that ability, and something's happened to John Payne, it looks like, out there, and he is in the pit. So from second position, he catches a spin coming out of turn 5, which is Sayat corner, and finds himself in the barriers on the inside. Pushes the limit just slightly too much, trying to stay with Greg Seitz, and just like that, a disaster there. The right side of the car completely caved in, and everybody jumped to position. And meanwhile, as that happened, Ed Benson going through a ride at Repsol.
Another look at it all the way through the gravel to the grass, perhaps barely scraping or not touching the wall there, so using all of the runoff and not too much more. Another little lock up as Ulf Olsen has Eugene Clark behind. They'd had Steve O'Malley and Peter Holstrom just a little bit closer, but appear to have shaken them across the last lap or two. O'Malley lost a little bit of time on his last lap. Still got a few laps left to play out these battles everywhere in the field, like you're seeing here, and also with Barry Hills, Russ Addy and others.
But the one thing you got to remember here right now, David, is the fact that Eugene Clark is trying to keep that pace here with an Ulf Olsen, who did not set a qualifying lap time, is your biggest mover in the field at 9 positions gained, and has got there through making clean and precise overtakes. And Richard Coulomb is the driver who is next in front of him, but about 2 seconds down the road, so should have enough time if he finds consistent 0.3 of a second a lap to get right up onto the back and attempt to try and make that move. Back further forward though, and it does start to slowly spread out a little bit between Hills and Addy and John Morgan, so they're now starting to think about that end game and what it looks like for them and the all-important points haul that they'll be gathering up at this moment in time. There's a big difference, of course, between 6th place, for example, and falling all the way back down to 9th place, so they will be picking and choosing their moments, I would say, with a lot of intrigue.
Think about the well-presented teams of 60-plus racing adventures. So clearly, Russ Addy and John Morgan, a little bit of flying in formation, but it's Anglo-Dutch Racing. Barry Hills that's in front of them in 7th, and his teammate Gerhardus Jorrison now up in 4th after the dramas that we saw for John Payne from 2nd place. So it's actually a good-looking race and way to start the season at the moment for Anglo-Dutch Racing. McCormick and Seitz might be teamed up again this season. We'll have a look at that at some point, and then of course throughout the season try to keep you updated on it. Are you noticing that Marcellus Breuning on his best laps could be sort of podium pace, but perhaps less consistent than some others?
Well, let's just have a look at his laps and see what the indication is. So his fastest lap is a 31.7, and so his last 3 laps were 32.1, 31.8, and a 32.1. But when he's had to battle and make those mistakes, he's dropped the time. So he's got a couple of 33s and high 32s in there as well. So I do think that if he can string together a race where he's not harassed, that he's not in any form of trouble, yes, he does have a very quick amount of pace, and he'll certainly look to use it. We certainly saw that, of course, when he was doing the Formula 3.5s, and he was racing up against some really talented drivers like the former Pro Strike Paul Ilbrink. So I look at Marcellus Bruning, and I think, yes, he certainly could step up and say he's got quite a bit of pace that he wants to use. We see some of the rubber discard there off of the tyres bouncing down the circuit, which you seem to find. But yeah, he can certainly find a podium if the stars align for him, and I think it's certainly not a million miles away.
So this is on board with John Morgan right now in the 9th place. I do love when you get just a good look at what the driver's hands are doing, what their inputs look like. So it's super smooth getting to that maximum steering angle and then slowly unwinding it for John Morgan. And also how many gear shifts you go through with a car like this. 6th on the front straight, down a 2nd there, quickly up through the gears so you head downhill a little bit, and then just the 2 downshifts into the chicane. And then you can also watch the shift lights to get a good indication how flat we are through some of these corners that are definitely a lift, or even tap the brakes in a GT car. You're carrying less straight line speed, way more cornering speed than a GT car in one of these.
Well, you're looking at how much speed can you carry, and of course all of the downforce on it means that you definitely can carry a lot more than a GT car. It certainly does go to say that when you start playing with the aerodynamics of these cars and trying to go through, it's like designing an upside down wing. And there is Jan-Erik Skresrud going for a 360 there through the final couple of corners. You can see in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, that is the move from Mike McCormick, which gets him through on Gerhardus Jorgensen for position, gains an extra one out there, and now up into that 4th position. And the one thing I do have to note about this Barcelona circuit is that, of course, when you've got the run that they've got and the regular circuit, so to speak, out there, of course, you don't have the regular circuit in real life anymore. It's actually a lot closer to run the historic layout of this circuit, because you're trying to find a balance between, okay, we'll take a tight, tricky rack chicane down at the back end of the circuit, compared to, oh, we'll take a nice sweeping run forward towards the end because we like the downforce and we like the fast element and we like the challenge.
And then you've got the reprofiled section here where they went, what if we make a corner that's somewhere between the tight sharp angle version and the swooping original version? It goes somewhere in between, so it's still a big enough braking zone, but it's not needlessly acute. I was going to say obtuse nearly, but it's not needlessly obtuse. That's you and I.
Well, that pretty much says everything we need to know. Right, so I'm sure that we'll find some good angles then on these battles with 3 laps to go, and I think Jorgensen might want to try and find a way to get back forward at it against Mike McCormick. Now, the way you can tell, I think, if they are still teammates here, Greg Seitz and Mike McCormick, is that I think McCormick's got decals, so to speak. He's got the accents on the front wing, and he's got the number on the back and the massive rust there on the rear wing. And Greg Seitz, by comparison, plain as day.
Indeed. So I recall at the end of last season, Roberto Catalano had a couple of good runs, a couple of good performances. Plenty happening in the air there as Stephen Karkner goes back to the pit lane for the 2nd time. And now he's having a really good run at the start of this new season as well, Roberto Catalano. So I will not try to jinx him or anything, but a good qualifying, and now a good 2nd place that he's running in at the moment. getting in towards the final few laps of the first of 2 races for 60 plus racing adventures from Circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya, and he's just matching the pace that Greg Garrison third has got. They're 9 and 12 seconds behind race leader Greg Seitz, who starts lap 18 to give us just 2 more, about 3 more minutes of racing.
Yeah, that gap, of course, at 9.5 seconds pretty much says all you need to know. Greg's been quick, and it's a very nice Greg sandwich at the moment with Roberto Catalano filling, which actually begs the question here at this moment in time, David, whether we'll see over the next couple of seasons Team Greg forming itself up between Greg Seitz and Greg Garris.
Greg's?
Yeah, the Bakers team.
Plenty to think about with that. This is with Marcellus Bräuning right now, nearly within the slipstream range of Gerhardus Jorgensen, nearly within slipstream range of Mike McCormick. If anything's going to happen, it needs to happen pretty quickly. It definitely seems to be the dirty part of the racetrack there. A few cars have been off, dragged a little bit back on. Fourth gear, holding fourth, just shifting to fifth on the way in there. Tipping it into fifth, just on the way into the right-hand corner. Playing the old games on PlayStation, I used to always, just for fun, follow that old bit of the racetrack, go wide at the top of the hill, as was the Grand Prix layout for 1 or 2 years. Todd Scholl's had a little bit more drama, he's done more damage to his car, so for Scholl and Karkner, it's been perhaps one to forget in race 1. Most drivers have kept their cars clean, but those who've scratched them once have scratched them again. There maybe is something in broken windows theory.
Yeah, it's not worked really too well for both of them as we focus with Marcellus Bräuning, who is looking at Gerhardus Jorgensen, thinking that you might be a little vulnerable on this last lap if I have a way to say anything about it. 6/10 quicker on this last lap that they've gone through, and Jorgensen at the moment sits with a 7 till just about a 6/10 gap by the time they went through. And also behind that, Russ Addy has caught back up to Barry Hills, which means that when it comes to the final half a lap of this race, it's going to be a grandstand.
Speaking of the grandstand, if you notice where the flag marshal posts are around here, they've got the same design motif as that giant grandstand on the front straight. So just a little design motif around the circuit that stretches all the way around to the little shade shelters at the flag marshal posts and the big shade shelters for the fans at the start finish line. That's where Greg Seitz heads to now from pole. He's led every lap, and he begins a new season of 60 plus racing adventures where he's left off the previous ones in very, very fine form. Other positions to be decided at the podium where Roberto Catalano still ahead of Greg Garris, but I don't think Russ Addy is going to be taking any late positions with this demonstration. Look at that. He got the gravel on his tyres. He then tried to go into the next corner on a narrow angle, and he did not have the grip. He'll be lucky if he stays ahead of John Morgan, because he won't be passing Barry Hills on the final lap.
No, he very much took the rallycross line there through the final couple of corners, so certainly had a lot that he was trying to navigate out of. Your biggest mover will be Ulf Olsen. He's close to Richard Coulomb, but not enough to go to double digits worth of positions gained. But simply put, the biggest compliment is that we saw nothing of Greg Seitz after the overtake, because he was in such a nice world of his own that we didn't need to really keep any focus on him.
End of lap 1, and he had just enough time in his pocket over John Payne, and then we didn't have to see too much of him. A couple more cars still to finish. JC Hay and Ed Benson. I think Ed Benson's still just on the lead lap. He's the last car that didn't go a lap down, so he'll complete the full 19 laps. Podium already completed, and then John Payne and Jan Erik Grefsrud the lap down. That's race 1 in the books. Had some drama in the podium positions, had plenty of drama in the middle of the field, and then drama for some drivers who ended up at the back. Greg Seitz took the win and the fastest lap on the final lap, a 1:30.769. Roberto Catalano qualified third. When John Payne crashed out, he moved up into second. Greg Garris moved up into third. plenty of battle from the rest of the drivers you see inside of the top 10 here. Mike McCormick fending off Marcellus Breuning and Gerhardus Jorrison. And they finish in 5th and 6th. And Barry Hills, Russ Addy, John Morgan, and Franz Josef Sturm was the top 10. Richard Coulomb and Ulf Olsen, 11th and 12th. Olsen, the biggest mover in the field with +9. Eugene Clark, Steve O'Malley, Peter Holstrom, JC Hay, and Ed Benson, the last drivers on the lead lap. John Payne. Forgive me, John Morgan. Crashing from 2nd place. Needed the spare car, and therefore he ended up a lap down in the 18th. Ahead of Jan-Erik Skrefsrud. Todd Scholl also doing big damage to his car out of the final corner. Stephen Karkner likewise. That proved one of the most committed corners on the racetrack, and when it came unstuck very quickly for the drivers who ended up 20th and 21st. At the opposite end of the field, though, Jake, was our race winner.
Yeah, he absolutely was, and he had a wonderful showcase of driving out there. There's not really much more that could be said about how great that his result was, as he joins me right now. So, Greg, race 1 being absolutely how that's gone for you over the course of last season into this season. It seems like nothing has changed over the 2-week break since we were last with us on the 60 Plus Racing Adventures. A little bit of pressure over the course of that race from John, but once he spun, was that just a case of bring it home?
Yeah, pretty much. I just wanted to be careful now that there's gravel out on the track. It can get a little squirrely in places, so it can come up and bite you. But yes, I was kind of looking out for that after the pressure was off. But yeah, he did a great job of keeping the pressure on for the first few laps.
So talk to me about that gravel, because it is one of the strongest things I think that's come out of this brand new build from season to season. What are you looking at when you're out there driving, and how on earth do you practice where other drivers go off, for example, say over the course of the race, especially at a gravel intensive track like this one, to try and work out where you are going to struggle maybe when you've got slightly less out there on circuit in terms of what's underneath your 4 tires?
Yeah, I'm really looking for gravel typically on the outside of the turn where you're kind of maximum loaded up on the outside tires. That's when it can get really squirrely. If you're not really loaded up, it's not so bad. But yeah, if you're really kind of pushing the grip and the tires and you hit a little bit of gravel, it can bite you.
Of course, you've got another race to concoct after this one. So in terms of how you go about things here with this opening round of the championship, is it just a case of more of the same for you in race 2? Because it looked like you didn't put a foot wrong there in that opening race.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do something similar. Early in the season, I don't want to give away any points to John, so I'm going to make him earn it. Later on, if I have a good lead in the championship, I tend to kind of back off and start the second race from a little further back. But early on, I think I'm going to just keep pushing, at the front.
Well, we're going to wish you all the best of luck then for race number 2. Greg Seitz joining us there in the 774 Chrome Machine, picking up the race victory. As David, I believe you've taken your wander down the virtual paddock and found your way to Roberto Catalano.
Yeah, hopefully should be joined by 2nd place finisher Roberto Catalano, and judging by the YouTube chat, a fan favorite. Well done, Roberto.
Thank you, guys. My English is very bad, but my drive is worst. That's no problem. If you play slow, I Phillips understand anything. In other moment, I answer other question. What do you did me? I was lucky. If I go in podium, everyone can go in podium. This is the good news for all participants.
Roberto, your English much better than my Italian, so thank you. But last season, your results were good, and now we saw some other drivers crashing. You did not crash in qualifying or in the race, so you get a good result. That's important.
Yes, but the luck is most important than the driving attitude. I was lucky. John forced in second place to take Greg and this spin out, but I don't deserve second place. John and Greg are other planet too fast. No one possibility to stay behind them. Impossible. I hope that your Italian well done next time, but my English, I think that no.
Grande Roberto.
Bravo. Grazie.
And good luck for race 2. I hope you enjoy driving this car and this racetrack, very high speed at Circuit Barcelona.
The luck is my best choice for next race. Thank you.
There we go. What a great sport. Our second place finisher, Roberto Catalano. And again, a lot of fans for him, maybe because he's so humble. We'll see what they can produce in the next race. A little break for 60 plus racing adventures. And when we come back, it's qualifying and race 2, the opening round of the season. Welcome back to RaceSpot coverage of 60-plus racing adventures, the iRacing League for drivers 60 years of age or older. It's a new season. We've had race 1 in the books from Barcelona here. We're gearing up for qualifying and then race 2. After a really strong opening race performance from Greg Seitz, Roberto Catalano was in second. John Payne could have been on the podium, but perhaps a little lapse in concentration for him means that he's one of the drivers who'll be looking for a little bit of redemption here in race 2. Drivers heading out onto track right now. I'm David Haynes, joined by Jake Sperry. It's Hugo Lewis in the production from RaceSpotTV. We look at Mike McCormick on his outlap.
Yeah, and this is where these drivers have already put one race down on the books already, so they understand what this circuit's all about, what they're doing. It's completely ideal, identical conditions to what they dealt with earlier on. So all they need to do is replicate, for some who are up at the top, what they did in race 1. For those who find themselves in race number 2, quite simply put, if they did not get the result that they wanted, now's the time that they need to improve. They've got experience under their belt, and this outlap becomes really crucial because you don't want to be scrubbing all of the good tyre life that you've got available to you, but at exactly the same time here, David, you don't want to be losing all of the heat that goes in through the tyres by not driving the car fast enough. So that's why we often say 80% full throttle is what we'd expect to see on an outlap, because that gives you the perfect ratio of I'm still keeping the heat in the tyres compared to I'm not scrubbing the speed.
Yep, and then with 2 flying laps, very often you won't push to the absolute limit on the first flying lap and then really look to maximize the second lap. So again, you sort of go outlap, preparation lap, but it's timed, and then your full attack final qualifying lap about to begin. The first of those 2 laps on board right now with Mike McCormick heading down towards turn 1 at ever increasing speed in top gear.
Yeah, this first corner, it's downhill, so you've got to try and pick the braking zone quite nicely at Elf corner. Turn 2 immediately follows as a right-left chicane, and then you're immediately thrown and thrusted into Renault. Turn 3, long right-hander. You don't have to worry too much. By the time you get halfway through the corner, you can let the steering come out as McCormick took a bit of a shallower line. Attacking, though, through at Repsol turn 4. Another case of these long parabolic-style corners, and then the drop down the hill through the middle of the corner. Very easy to spin the car on the exit if you're a little bit too early on the power through Seat, and over, of course, towards turn 6 and 7. The house there up on the top, for those who like your iRacing Easter eggs, houses a picture of Dave Kammeyer and Dale Earnhardt Jr. on it. There's one at every single circuit in iRacing, so go scour across each and every part of iRacing if you haven't had the chance to already. Over the top of the plateau we've gone already at turn 9. That is, of course, the Kampse corner. Into Lekaixa here at turn 10. You're trying again with an early turn in to use the power on the exit. It's very easy to go through the gears and spin something up if you're not too careful. Once more attacking off of the exit then, as he's gone through Bank Sabadell, now in through Europe Car Corner and over towards New Holland, which ends the lap here at this wonderful, wonderful circuit of Barcelona, Catalonia, and driving for the short run towards the line. 32.5 is a benchmark, half a second short, now 7/10 short of John Payne.
And the lap times are quick on this historic circuit as you've got a more open turn 9. You've got no chicane to break up the end of the lap where you can then carry so much speed. And this is a car that sort of rewards that carrying speed through the high speed corners. Greg Seitz has no qualifying time yet, but he's out there looking for one in the 7.74, and the benchmark, it's John Payne with a 1:31.8. A few other times going close to that, like Roberto Catalano, Marcel Sproin, and Craig Garris's time, I think, just went in there, and Todd Scholl into 5th as Russ Addy goes to 10th, and we have 12 drivers with qualifying times at the moment. We eagerly await Greg Seitz's lap here.
We do, as Greg makes his way into the final sector of the lap, the stadium-style section here. As you've got the massive grandstands on the left-hand side that you're always looking to try and appreciate and please as you go on forward. Once more now looking to attack fourth gear. Now just making the flick at the end of the corner into fifth, carrying the speed, carrying the momentum through New Holland corner and over towards the line. 31.8 is the time to beat, and he actually just goes on to start his flying lap out there. So that was his out lap. So this will be his first attempt. He's leaving it to the second half of the session to really make some big progress, which will mean that everyone else will look around. John Payne, look out, 31.3.
Yep, a new benchmark for pole position. 3 fastest sectors of the lap from 3. It was purple, purple, purple for John Payne. No one's gone quicker than that anywhere on the track, and it combines for a 1:31.3. That is a very good time indeed. Roberto Catalano's second. His qualifying done. Almost everyone has finished their second lap and is done. Curtis Yorison, Russ Adder, Eugene Clark are about to finish their second timed laps. Greg Seitz through the first sector. He's a bit wide there, and it was already a couple tenths away from John Payne through that sector. Middle sector, I think he'll lose a tiny bit more as well, but it probably will still be about setting up for the final of the 2 laps. This one, his first attempt, isn't going to give him pole by the looks of things. And so it will probably put him towards the front row, but he'll need to be tidier and perhaps a little bit better tyre preparation for the second lap. 1 corner for him to navigate before it's just complete full throttle and a straight line to the timing line to complete lap 1, but perhaps more importantly to start lap 2. That sends him to second place. It is going to put him on the front row with 0.2 of a second to find. Greg Seitz seems like the kind of driver who might have it in him. Peter Holstrom, I suspect, is done from this qualifying with a 33.4.
I think it's Greg and Greg only at the moment who can improve. Everyone else has got their laps done and sorted and are making their way to the pits. So we'll watch Peter Hallstrom make his run over towards the pits as he now looks to try and just continue on and get practice in. That's all it will be for him at this moment in time. Just getting those final bits of preparation together, getting the rhythm of the circuit into play. But this is the driver that you need focus on. Greg Seitz up the hill through the Campsa corner, 27.2 opening sector of the lap. Now looking at that second sector time and hoping that it is in the wheelhouse of what he wants. A 35.75 there is pretty good, but now the question is going to be, is it 0.2 improvement good here compared to a 31.3? Really needing to attack now out of Bank Sabadell, moving over towards the penultimate corner of Europe car. Now how about New Holland, and can Greg Seitz find the 0.2 that puts him on pole again? Moves himself over towards the line. 31.205. Oh, you bet he can, and he does so by 1/10.5.
Found about 1/10 in the first sector, found that 0.5 in the final sector. Middle sector pretty much equal to what John Payne did. Most of the work on that pole lap for Greg Seitz set in the first 5 or 6 corners, and then the rest of it just tidy, matching John Payne. And so Greg Seitz takes the pole position. John Payne will start out a second, and Roberto Catalano will again have a 3rd place start, and that locks in the grid for race 2. 2 other drivers just left out there like Barry Hills. Perhaps there's a few drivers who think that even race 1 wasn't enough practice.
Well, that's the thing here. It might be the same conditions as you had before, but drivers work on a field. You've had that 20-minute break between sessions, so there is that time to decompose. You've got to gather that level back up again, so you've got to try and put yourself back in the same situation, David. I think that's where these drivers are looking at going, yes, I'd love the practice.
And the weather's the same as well, so you don't need to worry about that changing too much for you. Biggest changing condition that drivers need to worry about by the looks of things is gravel on the racetrack. We saw a bit of that in race 1. This is the grid for race number 2. So Greg Seitz has that 131.2. Interesting to note, he went quicker than that for his fastest lap of the race in race number 1. So if you gave them more laps, I think that'd continue to go quicker in these cars. They'd also probably burn off a little bit more fuel as they went along with it as well. Not a bad qualifying effort though from John Payne, and he's one of those drivers who could achieve so much more from race 2 than they received from race 1. And then there's Roberto Catalano and Gerhardus Jorrison, 3rd and 4th. Another example of a driver with some race 2 redemption on the cards, Todd Scholl. That's a good qualifying to start out of 5th. He used up 2 spare cars in race number 1, and he'll want a clean race number 2. Greg Garris starts out of 6th on the grid, with Mike McCormick in 7th, Russ Addy in 8th. Race 1's excitement machine, Marcellus Breuning, starts out at 9th, just ahead of Barry Hills. And then Ulf Olsen is 11th with John Morgan in 12th position. Tiny bit fewer drivers for race number 2 as we have Stephen Karkner in 13th, Franz Josef Stumm in 14th, Eugene Clark in 15th, Peter Hallström in 16th, and Jan Erik Skrefsrud in 17th position.
You can definitely see the differences out there. So missing the lights, for example, of JC Hay, who hasn't managed to be here. The likes of Ed Benson missing from this one as well. So we will be seeing a couple of drivers maybe a little bit different out there. I believe Richard Coulomb also forms that in terms of a base. But if you feel like you only got a good 1 race down in the books and you feel like you don't need to put a second one down, then by all means choose not to go and put that second race together if you feel like you can't improve on the score that you already have. I'd personally love to put those 2 races together and say, you know what, I might be able to get even more out there, and I think Greg Seitz is very eager to go out there and try and get the double done here at Barcelona, because he is desperate to overtake the Porsche first safety car.
Yeah, he's very, very eager for that, or he just wants to get closer to have a good listen to that beautiful, beautiful sound. That's, that's what I'm going to tell myself. Even on this formation lap, kicking up a little bit of dust from the drivers on the wide line. It's the tight line to the pit lane entry that the safety car goes. Greg Seitz perfected this in race 1, now race 2. He's going to go even earlier, try to catch John Payne, Roberto Catalano, and the rest of them napping as they head over to try to break the toe. They're kicking up an incredible amount of dust. Once again, you see it in the air as we've got 2 lanes for the most part heading down towards turn 1. John Payne gets a good toe, but doesn't break as bravely as maybe he could around the outside. Greg Seitz leads us without too much change up front there. You got to look backwards at 5th place, 6th place, Mike McCormick and Gerhardus Jorrison battling, and also Marcellus Breuning on a super wide line there with no tyre temperature yet off this race start.
Again, attacking with Barry Hills, who he did quite a bit in race 1 through the Repsol corner and trying to get that brake sorted. He can't. Barry Hills takes the place and he's happy with that. Russ Addy also in play. They all start locking up here, going in towards Seat corner and trying to rush back up to what is sometimes known as TV3 here, turns 7 and 8. Out on circuit, dancing on into the corner, looking for drive off the exit and taking the biggest climb up the hill around this track to the Campsa corner, which is a commitment-based corner that if you stand anywhere out of where you need to be, you're going to be in a world of trouble. But it's Seitz who leads, Payne in 2nd, Catalano 3rd, and Todd Scholl finding himself in 4th position, now trying to give chasers there side by side. Now it's Russ Addy's turn to try and attack here, with positions changing about once again as they went through at turn 5. Breuning was able to get through on hills, and as such, that's why they got to see now that Russ Addy has made his way through.
Yep, a few positions changing now as we've completed lap 1. Greg Seitz has a just over 1 second lead from John Payne, and that's pretty critical for trying to break away. And a couple more moves. Marcellus Breuning's going to have a look, and there Barry Hills and Ross Addy nearly make contact. The teammates are reunited. Ross Addy and John Morgan, as we take a look, running through turn 3 with John Morgan. He's gained 1 spot. Not expecting to see his teammate Ross Addy, who's lost 2 on this opening lap, just like Gerhardus Jorrison has, from 4th on the grid back to 6th. And Mike McCormick's been the gainer with 1 lap completed from 7th to 5th.
Well, we'll see what John Morgan can do in terms of how he goes through. Not really much movement here on the opening lap, but there is Stephen Karkner battering the anti-cut curb there on the outskirts of turn 7, technically the inside of turn 8, up the hill at Campsa and trying to eye up here some overtakes. Brunning was certainly hoping he could get through on someone like Greg Garris, for example, who's down 1 off of the start. So we're really seeing the difference makers, and in this lower grip that they've got out right at the moment, it's Greg Seitz who's running away to a massive margin here. He's already 2 seconds down the road.
Yeah, Payne might have had a little bit of a mistake, because now he's even closer to Roberto Catalano in 3rd as well. You've got this super powerful slipstream effect down the front straight, and Todd Scholl, it's Mike McCormick getting very, very close. Breuning's going to have a pull out and look to the inside here, quite late on Greg Garris, so he leaves plenty of space. They both leave each other plenty of space. Cost them a bit of time, but it's still quite early in this second race.
It is early to start thinking about, okay, this is the move for the race, but I'm sure that when you've got a massive train like this, you can see that you're in the train for 4th position. You want to try and move up 1 position at a time if you're Marcellus Breuning. Greg Garris is that first notch on the train, and then you've got Jorrison, McCormick and Todd Scholl that you can start trying to work on through. But it's not going to be plain sailing this. It's never easy to try and find that move. And you can see the differences of line there. Scholl taking a very aggressive line, having to go wide out of turn 8, very narrow, very shallow from Mike McCormick, trying to carry the speed and get that opportunity here at Lekaixa at turn 10. He decides to back out of it and not really want to try and throw in and make something happen just yet, but he's still got other chances to do so. But he's got to be very careful that Gerhardus Jorrison doesn't run up the back of him, and because of that, here comes Greg Garris to the inside of Europe car corner, leading over to New Holland, and he'll be hoping that there's not much troubles, because there is an old Holland driver behind him in Marcellus Breuning, who will now get the double toe along the long front stretch, looking for the race lead. Are they thinking 3 wide? Backing out of it goes Greg Garris. Breuning now trying to get them both, and watch out in the background, because here comes Barry.
So Barry Hills will get 1 on Greg Garris. Nearly contact between Breuning and Jorrison. Jorrison stays ahead, and there is a little bit of dramas back there for Barry Hills. Now Russ Addy comes through for a position. Such a checkup in the final sector, then a mega slipstream down the front straight, and this is what it gives us. Breuning looking down the inside, knows he's going to have the outside for the next section, so he's going to need to be good on the brakes there, but he can't be good enough, and the driver on the inside locks up and sends Breuning out into the gravel. Gerhardus Jorrison apologetic, but 4 or 5 more spots lost from Marcellus Breuning. Does he have damage? Does he have gravel on his tyres? What's the state of it?
Well, the state of it is that he is down a number of positions. He won't think about the damage at the moment from an incident like that. It was just the contact that he had front to rear. It was a lock up through the middle of the corner by Jorrison. Not much that Breuning can do. I think it was light in terms of the contact that he had, and now he's got to try and really attack now over this, as he's down with Karkner and Ulf Olsen and John Morgan, for example. So a big gap developed, and all of that battling now means that Mike McCormick and Todd Scholl have been able to break away from Gerhardus Jorrison and Greg Garris and Russ Addy in the group that's there. So it has just shaken things up for what is now 4th and 5th position. It's given them the license to go away, to go and look and say, you know what, we're only 2 seconds behind Catalano and Payne, and trying to make that happen. Back on the front stretch once again, and this is where John Morgan is trying to eye up Barry Hills, and you can see how dirty this track is at the moment.
Yeah, who brought that onto the racing line? So there's Jorrison as he locks up and he runs wide. I was watching that between Breuning and Jorrison, and I thought Breuning's not taken the opportunity to go around the outside here. He's braked a little too early, but in fact, it was Jorrison who braked a little bit too late. All things relative like that. And then it brought the whole rest of this battle in. It's almost inseparable from 6th to 15th right now. There are some quick and also consistent drivers to the tail of this who could pick up a few more spots. If it continues to battle the way it is as well, they really could. There's a Greg Garris in behind Gerhardus Jorrison. No real signs of any damage for Jorrison or Breuning after that. No sign of Breuning shying away from trying to get to the inside on Ulf Olsen, who's going to give him 0.8 of a Super Formula Lights width.
We call that racing room. That's what was given, racing room. Breuning trying to go to that inside line, 2 tyres on the grass like Ryan Hunter-Ray, and could not quite find that opportunity to say, you know what, that one is going to be the move that is made. So this is really costing his race right now, down in 12th position. He needs to clear Ulf Olsen because John Morgan and co are there and are gone, but there's the defense to the inside. Breuning taking the natural line, Olsen trying to cover on that inside line, and Olsen throws the car into the corner and makes it stick as well. This is the nightmare that Breuning doesn't want. Ulf Olsen is battling with every intent to hold him back.
Yeah, well, I think from previous experience there, Breuning's going, I don't want to be the one around the outside of someone very gutsy to break down the inside. He's seen it happen before. Now he washes out a bit wide here, and Stephen Karkner gets alongside him. Perfectly placed braking though for Breuning down the inside as he's able to defend his spot. Perhaps in a couple of corners time, I think if he can have another go at Ulf Olsen, he's fading quickly away from drivers that have got similar pace to him, like Jorrison, like Garris, drivers a bit further up the road that maybe Breuning should be battling. We're going to get a repeat. Ulf Olsen's just going to cover a little further, just a little bit further across this time, and round the outside. Gutsy from Breuning. Can he find grip, or is it too dirty there? I think he's got grip. Gives him the inside into the right-hander that follows. Breuning's finally got that back. It's Ulf Olsen, as I try to combine that into one singular name like Brittany or Madonna. Gets a bit of dirt on his tyres around the outside there, and it doesn't help him now. He's a bit wide here with the dirty air, the understeer. He needs to look more in his mirrors than he needs to look forward at Breuning.
And I wonder actually how much we see Greg Garris dealing with Gerhardus Jorrison for position and will take that place away and move up into 6th. I wonder how much of this track not being swept from practice to qualifying has had an effect on this race, and likewise not being swept from qualifying to the race. So you're looking around at this track and it is a lot dirtier than we expected it to be, as the 2 Anglo-Dutch teammates very nearly collide, as Jorrison on the inside, Hills on the outside. It's Hills who makes his way through, and Jorrison now starting to fall back through the field like a stone at this moment in time. But I wonder how much that track is having a huge difference, because often that you find you can get the tick box that says keep over the track state from one session to the next, and sometimes we do see that as a bit of a refresh from time to time. So obviously it's keep the track state as it is, which means if you go off in practice, you're going to make life worse for everybody else in the race.
Yeah, because before you'd normally want to keep the track state. If you rubbered it in practice and qualifying, then the race immediately followed. You want that. There's Olsen getting just a bad ride of the sausage curb and spinning around. Whereas now you're like, can we keep the rubbered in amount but just sweep the gravel off? Because that's what would normally happen on a race weekend. They're not out there trying to take away the rubber off the racing line, but get a truck or a broom or whatever and sweep the gravel off the racetrack is a normal thing to do in the 10 minutes between racing sessions. Ulf Olsen definitely put some more rubber down than he was intending with that maneuver earlier. He drops back to 16th place. Jan-Erik Skrefsrud is 17th and towing to pit lane with an incident, but it continues to just be great battling and great racing in these middle positions. That's where this battle is right now. 8th place, 7th place, 6th place. It's all good stuff, and Barry Hills is continuing to move up through the field, up towards behind Russ Addy, who might have the pace to catch Greg Garris. It's Todd Scholl and Mike McCormick that have been the drivers to break away from the middle of it. They're still battling over 4th and 5th. So our top 3 positions remain how they qualified: Greg Seitz, John Payne, and Roberto Catalano.
I tell you what, I would love to see in iRacing one day virtual marshals running out onto the track with their little animated brooms and just trying to sweep the circuit off just in the downtime between sessions. That would be absolutely lovely to see. But out there at the moment,
it's the number 1 debris cleaning solution, track sweep by FODBOS. Other track sweepers can only sweep at 30-40 kilometers an hour. FODBOS maintains its effectiveness at speeds up to 85 kilometers an hour, allowing you to clear debris and gravel faster.
Like this one, for example, from Jan-Erik Skrefsrud, who has a massive shunt over into the rallycross barriers there on the right-hand side. That was all about running a bit too aggressive through Bank Sabadell, getting up onto the gravel and bringing that across during the spin. That is the sort of gravel that your FODBOS, so to speak there, David, would be able to clean up.
Not sponsored, I just love FODBOS. Because it's got a great name, they've got great advertisement, and it clears racetracks quickly, so you can have more categories, more racing, less gravel and debris. The drivers don't need to shy away from using all of the track, getting up to the limits of the track, because if they do drag a bit of gravel on, you can clean it quickly before the next series goes out. These drivers have done it a little bit, but not on purpose, just lock-ups. It's the side-by-side battling. In Ulf Olsen's case, it was getting a little bit of the curbing. All sorts of things can lead the drivers to just dip their tyres in the grass, the gravel, and redistribute it to places that it's not normally great.
Yes, and of course, the more that's distributed over the course of the race, you know, you can see one lap that you're absolutely fine, and you might stumble across it the next and go, oh, I don't have as much as what I used to here at this corner. You've got to really pay attention to what's going on now on the track as we focus on this middle pack group, which is spearheaded by Todd Scholl with Mike McCormick there. Greg Garris has done well to pull this gap back in again. Russ Addy holding off Barry Hills. So the 5 of them out there just doing what is needed at the moment. Hills happy to run around at the halfway stage, already 6.3 seconds. The margin here to the front over for Greg Seitz over John Payne. But for Barry Hills at this point, he is staring down Russ Addy thinking, where can I find a way to just leapfrog through the group, through the table, so to speak? Already up 2, wants to be up 3. I think patience is going to have to prevail, because I'm not sure he's going to get the run up the top of Campster Corner.
And it's good pace from Greg Garris at the moment as he gets away from those 2 and he gets towards Scholl and McCormick. That was a breakaway, but after a number of laps and Greg Garris being able to put in some clean laps, he's showing the kind of pace he's got. So his fastest lap of a 1:31.7, quicker than the fastest laps in the 1:32s for Todd Scholl and Mike McCormick. That's the kind of pace they're doing at the moment. And then Russ Addy, Barry Hills, Gerhardus Joris in here. They're also fastest laps, tiny bit quicker than Todd Scholl and Mike McCormick, but they've been doing all of that, what we've seen, and costing themselves some time that they are now just starting to get back in the second part of the race here. McCormick runs wide out the final corner. Greg Garris gets a good run. He's right in the toe for a top 5. He pulls to the inside and he's got so much more overspeed. Combination of speed carried onto the straight and the slipstream down the inside, and into the top 5 goes Greg Garris.
Yeah, and he's really pushed for that one because he's actually clipped the gravel going out there of turn 2, which indicates how much he's really wanting it. And Barry Hills also wants it. McCormick might have a look back, but so too might Barry Hills into Repsol, both of whom decide that they don't want to really go out there and attack. So Russ Addy then and Greg Garris will remain in their places as things stand, dropping down through Seat and looking to drive again off of the exit. They're looking for as much power as they can, and they're traveling at about 200 kilometers an hour before they hit the brakes through turns 7 and 8. That transfer section of the track, you don't have to scrub much speed through there, but you have to scrub enough.
So this is 4th through to 8th, and then even back to Marcel Sproining there in 11th. Fastest in this pack at the moment. Barry Hills, he's got Slipstream really powerfully just in behind Russ Addy, who's not hanging about either. And Greg Garris also not hanging about. So Barry Hills is one of the quickest drivers in this group at the moment. Within a car length of Russ Addy, needs to mind the dirty air. Just that half a car width wider, and he's almost way too wide out the final corner, but he doesn't seem like he lifted because he carries speed onto the front straight right behind Russ Addy. And he's the one popping out of the toe to look for the inside in turn 1. Greg Garris managed to hold his spot from Mike McCormick. Barry Hills goes up ahead of Russ Addy as we begin lap 12 with this pack. Race leaders, the podium just a little bit further up the road on lap number 12.
Difference there on the straight. Slipstream between no slipstream was 4 kilometers an hour's difference. So it doesn't sound like much, 4 kilometers an hour. That is about, I would say, 2/3 of walking speeds different there, 4 kilometers an hour. So not really much in terms of pace, but you put it in the context of you've got a really, really big long straight at the Circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya. You put into the context that you've got the momentum to go forward. All you need to do is pull alongside to command the corner, and it's all you need, and that's why we saw that move happen. And now we're starting to see the return of Gerhardus Jorgensen onto this group as he tries to rally back here, looking around and knowing that there'll be laps 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19 remaining after this one, which means he'll have 7 laps to make the move.
I always think of it like this: you spend 15 seconds or so on the straight. If you've got a walking pace speed advantage for that, well, you think about, you know, how many cars lengths in a shopping centre car park you could walk in 15 seconds at walking pace. You could cover 5 or 6 cars. You come onto the straight 4 car lengths behind someone, you're going to be able to challenge them into turn 1 as you've got what I think of as walking down the gap of a couple of car lengths that can be really powerful with the slipstream like that in these cars. They're not an incredible amount of horsepower, but they do have wings and everything on them, and they are very light. A little bit like a leaf in the wind. Also makes the slipstream effect very powerful from these cars. What we're seeing is peak speed trap speeds from Barry Hills, for example, 254 k's an hour, but I'm seeing 244 from Greg Seitz, who's led this race the whole way in clean air. It's the combination of this car and the racetrack that gives you that much of a straight line speed advantage getting a good toe. All around drama for Gerhardus Jorgensen. He's dropping down the timing.
Yeah.
He's had a spin, but it's sort of earlier in the complex than what Ulf Olsen did.
Yeah, so he's gone and lost it on the entry to turn 7, so that's very easily done. He's just tried to flick it into the corner, and he's just put too much speed in through it, so the back's just decided, no, I'm not going to stick down. You're going to see it here on screen. Nope, just decided, don't want to do that. He was immediately onto the brakes, and then just having to take the long, embarrassing trundle out of the gravel trap to get back onto the racing circuit. So was able to continue on, which is the important matter of fact. It puts himself just behind Eugene Clark now in 14th position, but that's not what you want. That's not what you want to happen when you turn the car into the corner. You don't expect it to spin as Barry Hills now eyes up Mike McCormick.
Only thing more embarrassing than that drive out of the gravel trap is when it doesn't drive out of the gravel trap and you didn't spin into the gravel trap, you just drove straight into it. I don't know, that happens sometimes, but Mike McCormick is in position here, being pressured by Barry Hills, one of the chargers at this point in the race. Gained a couple of positions, picked them off as he's gone. Even his own teammate moved ahead of his own teammate who'd qualified stronger than him. Barry Hills is having a great race too in 60-plus racing adventures from Circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya. And he's got a few more cars lined up. They haven't let Greg Garris get away as Garris moved past a few here. He's got towards Todd Scholl, but not been able to close too much further in the laps that followed, so perhaps saving to make a push in these few remaining laps.
well, if he can try and find himself any opportunity right now to go forward, to gain those extra spots, he's just got to be very, very precise about the way he manages it compared to McCormick, because he'll be looking to try and gain any advantage he can, but there will be slipstream from the cars in front, like for example Greg Garris that McCormick will be gaining on, and Garris will be gaining on Todd Scholl, who's had a very good race in fourth. But if you're not close enough for it, here comes the look back to the inside. Barry Hills takes the place away and moves up to sixth. That puts him up +4 in this race and is the biggest mover in this race by a matter of 1 place in comparison. Tied for 4 places. He is the best at 4 places games. Ulf Olsen, 4 places lost.
Yeah, John Morgan 3 positions gained is the next best. Mike McCormick wasn't particularly fond of trying to defend that too hard. Now he's got the gravel, now he's got the wall. From playing very, very cautious early in the lap as he battled wheel to wheel, he's made a little bit of an error as he's caught the dirty air, caught the gravel, caught the wall, done some damage to his nose as well, and he will drop yet further down. Here's Greg Garris with a good toe, but as he closed in behind, just didn't get close enough in time. This is just how much it takes, that much of the gravel.
Yeah, he just attacks a little bit too hard on the exit of the corner, gets the gravel, and then throws the car across the circuit. We've seen it time and time again. It's been position 1 in terms of where you have an instant here, and if it hasn't been position 1, it's been position 1A. Oh my goodness, Greg Garris is pushing like crazy, and I think the understanding of he's going to go and try and do whatever he can to go and get these places has just been personified there. He threw everything through New Holland Corner, and still he remains steadfastly stuck to the back of Todd Scholl in the battle of best of the rest for P4.
Yeah, it was earlier on the previous lap that he got very close, and as he was closing in the slipstream, the corner came up just too early for him to think about a dive down the inside. He did manage to get close enough to think about it, and then ran out of straight. So now he's going to try to set up again, perhaps in a similar part of the lap, or perhaps just be a bit tidier through the end of the lap. It's Marcellus Breuning getting ahead of John Morgan for 8th. It wasn't all that long ago that Breuning was down in 11th. He would have gained 1 position from Mike McCormick crashing. Looks like he's just gained a position from passing John Morgan. And here's Scholl, defensive once again from Greg Garris. Was looking for over-under, was looking for around the outside. Now just looking to stay close through these final sequence of corners. Thought Scholl was wide, just came back for a late apex.
Yeah, I think the way that you're looking at Todd Scholl, he's doing all the things that you'd want to do if you are the car in front. You're trying to get these wide open entries to the corner because you're trying to bring the car back off of the exit, which allows you that opportunity to attack off of it. And that's the key, the difference maker that you're seeing. Here comes Greg Garris, though, and he couldn't get enough of a run away. Big lunge down to the inside. Has he got enough? There's a little bit of contact there between them. I think they just avoid it. Now through the middle, because off the road goes Garris, taking advantage. Oh, Barry Hills, head for the hills. What a great run.
But then Greg Garris wide through turn 2, through the gravel, got the dirt on his tyres, has spun it at turn 3, being clipped by Russ Addy, all coming undone for Greg Garris. He thought he smelt an opportunity for 4th place, overcooked it at the start of the lap, and then it's come undone. More dramas than here for Barry Hills. He nearly ran it through the gravel there. Todd Scholl's the smartest one here as he's avoided all of the dramas. He gets 5th place. It's not the 4th that he had at the start of the lap, but he's got a car that is in good working order. The same cannot be said for Greg Garris, who I think lost his nose as well. High drama.
It's a lot of drama, and I think it all stems from the fact that Greg Garris had dirty tyres and couldn't just put the grip down going through turn 3. I think that was the difference. He thought he could go back onto the power flat out, and he just couldn't. And as such, that's the instant, and around you go. Marcellus Breuning now moves up into 6th position. John Morgan behind him in 7th. Todd Scholl maintains 5th. Barry Hill's now 4th. Now, here's the look. Down the inside, he's locked up the front, so he's tried to keep himself out of of the way, and then he's got no drive through the second part of the corner and understeers wide. He comes back onto circuit, and then as he's just going through the gears, he realizes second's not the gear for me. I need to go up into third, and the car just having that shift of gears says no, goes around, and then Russ Addy just runs into him with nowhere to go. Addy has pulled the car into the pits of his own accord, will get a fast repair and will go back out racing again. But you look at that and you have to say that is an incident all of Greg Garris is doing.
Yeah, a little ambitious in turn one, managed to pick up a bit of understeer in some way through turn two, and then the combination of being on the marbles with dirt on his tyres, nothing like the grip he was expecting, and then it looped around, and Russ Addy trying to drive through the smoke, has picked the wrong side to go, and that's two damaged cars in the battle for fourth, fifth, sixth place. Barry Hills carves through 6 positions gained. He picks up the fourth. Todd Scholl into fifth. Marcellus Breuning's now up into 6th. John Morgan going with him in 7th. Stephen Carpenter and Franz Joseph Sturm, we have not talked about a whole lot, but as they've dodged the carnage, they're also now 5 positions gained into 8th and 9th, ahead of all the drivers who've had to take some repairs. Greg Garris starts the final lap of the race, and it was the final lap of race 1 where he set the fastest lap of the race. I imagine he's probably pushing pretty hard here as well. He set the fastest lap of the race last lap, but is he looking to go one better? This is sometimes the way that he does it. I don't have all of the timing sectors up, but now I will. A 10th down in the first sector on his personal best. Don't have the middle sector just yet, but he looks like he's not quite pushing it to the limits.
And why should he? He's got 13.5 seconds here as Greg cites. He has been completely dominant in these lower grip conditions with a track that has been dirty from the word go. He has been just dancing through, and he's got oodles of grip where everyone else around him, just simply put, hasn't. John Payne couldn't get close enough. Roberto Catalano couldn't get close enough. Greg Seitz has just been a masterclass of a driver once again.
So he's going to start this season in perfect style. 2 race wins. He'll lead the championship because no one else will have stood on the top step of the podium yet to be able to match it here in round 1. 2 from 2, Greg Seitz, behind John Payne. He's dropping just a little bit of time. He's only barely ahead of Roberto Catalano, who finished in 2nd in the previous race. Great final lap from Catalano just to keep some pressure on John Payne. There's your podium, and this is a good race from John Payne to take that 2nd place, having crashed out of race 1 functionally. Barry Hills, Todd Scholl, Marcellus Breuning, John Morgan crossing the finish line. Here's Eugene Clark. Gerhardus Jorrison just behind. The timing line is relatively early out of the final corner. It's not a long way down the straight. And so it starts to get the results of race 2.
Yeah, I think really it's been a wonderful drive here once again from Greg Seitz, but I think the element of that race 2 was really indicated by how dirty the track became for that race. I think that these drivers now know they've got a brand new skill that they've got to work on, which is, of course, dealing with those sub conditions. As you can see, number 774 in pure domination again.
So this is the results from race number 2. Greg Seitz setting the fastest lap of the race on the penultimate lap instead of the final one this time around, with a 13-second advantage to John Payne and Roberto Catalano. They started to close in a little bit on each other towards the end. Barry Hills, Todd Scholl, Marcellus Breuning, John Morgan, Stephen Carpenter, and Franz Josef Sturm, with Greg Garris completing the top 10. Barry Hills most positions gained, and then a tie for 5 positions gained. John Morgan, Stephen Carpenter, Franz Josef Sturm. Eugene Clark, Gerhardus Jorrison, Ulf Olsen, Russ Addy, Peter Holstrom are the drivers finishing on the lead lap. Jan-Erik Skrefsrud going 1 lap down. Mike McCormick going 3 laps down. Driver we didn't speak to after race number 1, but we get the chance after race number 2. John Payne, race number 2 a little kinder to you. What happened in race 1 though?
Hey guys, you got me?
We copy.
Boy, race 1. So for me to keep up with Greg, I have to go at 10 tenths. He can be tooling around at 8 tenths, 7 tenths, eating lunch while he's doing it. But I have to be at 10 tenths, and I got a little ahead of my skis.
We've seen that, I think some of the little dipping two tires, it was always, a punishing thing to do in a high-speed corner that could spin you out, but the gravel behaves differently, the grass behaves differently, the marbles behave differently. It's the car itself seems relatively unchanged from a season ago, but the tracks, the surfaces, it looks different how the cars dance and behave and how you guys are racing them.
Yeah, it's going to be fun seeing, how it shows itself at other tracks. I really like the update. You just never know what you're going to come up on any given corner. That one didn't feel too different than just any other. Dip a wheel off and get some overspin. But yeah, so in the second race, I knew I had to have a finish. So initially my goal was just get second place. But then I had a pretty good start. And I thought, well, if I could stay with him, let him tow me around, maybe something could happen. But he broke the draft in lap 1, and then it was just trying to get away from Roberto. And once I got a little breathing room there, I just kind of dialed it back and just tried to finish in second. I'm sorry about the show, but, I had to have a result.
Yeah, an interesting kind of quirk of the format where you take your best result from race 1 or race 2. Greg Seitz is like, I've got to win both races so that I have a championship lead, and you're thinking, I just got to bag something from race 2 and I can take decent points away from this round.
Well, he always thinks that. Fast lap, everything.
Yeah, absolutely optimizing it. Well, congratulations on bringing it together in the race 2 here and starting off season of 60 plus racing adventures with some decent points in the bag.
Good to hear from you guys again.
We've got a whole podium with us, Jake Sperry. So if your Italian is as good as mine, can we go to third place, Roberto Catalano?
Well, I can try my Italian. It's as good as my Google Translate.
I hope your Italian is better than the last time. I am waiting for this.
You're waiting for it. So let's see what my best Google Translate can come up with. So, Roberto, per te un doppio podio oggi. Ci deve dati fiducia per la prossima stagione.
Bravissimo, great Italian. Your Italian is better than my English for the match. You are a good Italian. Facciamo un'intervista in italiano. I hope to enjoy, and in this league we enjoy very well. I thanks John Morgan that organized the league and all the participants. It's very fun. It's very fun every week. The race, the training, and we have Greg and John that are an inspiration for us. It's fantastic.
So a fantastic bit of driving for you. Talk us through the final stages of your race and chasing down then to John, because it looked like for just a brief moment you might have had a chance of taking that second place.
No, I think that John this time prefer no risk. If John won't, I no so fast. I am not fast. It's John that are slow in the final lap to conserve the second position, I think.
And so looking forward to you and the season that you've got in front of you is a lot of power circuits where it's very much a case of you need the slipstream to really make that happen and get overtakes and gain places. So when it comes to the power tracks which are coming up in the season, does that give you more confidence or less confidence than what you've brought today here at Barcelona?
No. I don't race in Barcelona after this weekend, but it's a good circuit for me. It's fast, and I try out well. I am confident. I love Italian circuit. I hope Imola, Mugello are my preferred, but it's normal. But today I was lucky. There isn't Ragnar. Ragnar is also fast. Greg and John, and I tell for this motive, for this, and there isn't Ragnar.
It's still a great podium, nevertheless, and maybe some of the Italian tracks will be more suited to your liking, but you take the podium where you can. Roberto Catalano joining us there, David, with a third place finish back-to-back.
Thank you.
And passionate about it too. We love it. And Greg Seitz, back-to-back wins, back-to-back fastest laps, the whole thing. John Payne thinks you're sort of trophy collecting to start the season.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I was having fun in the second race. I think once I had won the first one, it took the pressure off, and so I just wanted to kind of push and see how fast I could go, and I didn't have to worry too much about making a mistake, and so I just had my head down and pushed. I could tell he wasn't really pushing 100% because he normally wouldn't lose that much time to me, so I figured he was going for like no incidents or something. But yeah, it was interesting to see that the gap kept building.
There's a light car with a lot of grip. There's a few corners I'm noticing that were perhaps close to flat out, but not quite flat out. Where were the real sort of challenges for the historic layout and this car?
I think going into the first chicane, if you get that right, I mean, I would vary a tenth or so through there, based on whether I nailed that apex on the first apex, because that sets you up for a nice exit, and then you carry all that speed all the way up into turn 4, I guess. And so I think that was one of the trickier ones. And then I think it's turn 6, the left-hander with the chicane on the inside. I mean, the curbs on the outside. That one's really tricky. A number of times I come right up to that curb, and if you hit the curb too hard, it definitely would have upset the car. So yeah, I was pushing right to the edge there.
Got a perhaps European heavy schedule coming up for this season, and a few other sort of slipstream intensive tracks. Phillip Island, of course, is a track very dear to my own heart that is very slipstream heavy, very, very high average speed sort of thing. So then how important is it, and how much focus do you put on trying to break the toe on the opening lap?
Lately a lot, and in past seasons not as much, but John is really hanging with me now, and so I'm really trying to push those first couple laps to break that toe, because like you said, last season I know we had a lot of very toe heavy tracks as well, and once he gets kind of behind me and the tires heat up, it's really hard to shake him. So my best chance is to drop him in the first lap or two, and that's what I did.
Yeah, so almost difficult, not that you would have experienced it, but a little difficult to follow around the twisty parts of this lap, and then with a really powerful slipstream on the front straight. So by about the end of the second sector, you're hoping to have that 1 second in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the longest straights of all of them, and yeah, if you're close, it's pretty easy to kind of get that toe all the way, even if you don't pass, just to stay with somebody, you can make up that ground. So yeah, it's like I really wanted to be kind of out in front far enough to break the toe, and I usually don't play games moving left and right, but I was the first race because I wanted to drop them.
Well, congratulations, Greg. And another season off to a flying start for yourself. We're going to pick up coverage for a couple more rounds through the remainder of the season, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah, I'm too, and congrats to John and Roberto as well. They did a great job from both races.
Well, there's our podium from race 2 of 60 plus racing adventures from historic Barcelona. And that's all from us from RaceSpotTV for 2024 with 60 plus racing adventures open wheel league as well. The next time we join this crew will be in the new year. So I hope you have yourself a very happy new year and see more 60 plus racing adventures in 2025. I've been David Haynes with Jake Sperry, Hugo Lewis in the production as both race wins went to Greg Seitz at Barcelona.